as slow and taste begin to enter you.
I expect that almost everyone gathered here with us this evening knew that force of nature that was Don Sauce Cain. When John Dusler, our host tonight, proposed this tribute, we approached the project as a sacred task. I say that because Don was so widely loved. When we absorbed the shock of losing him back in 2018, the outpouring of admiration and affection for the guy was amazing. Most of us are lucky if we have 100 or so friends. Do a quick count. We're not talking about Facebook. We're talking about real friends. Can you even imagine how many Don had? He had the knack, that grin and that twinkle in the eye. And that's the funny thing. We're here tonight to celebrate Don's most famous throw, his Maximum Time Aloft toss that has been the world record for exactly 36 years today. One of my standard lines about MTA in a demo or something is that it's the game for people with no friends. Well, our most prodigious practitioner of that solitary art had more friends than we can count. We all know that his standard pickup line upon meeting anybody, anywhere, anytime was, "Hey, want to throw?" He probably also has the world record for the largest number of different people with whom he played catch. That would not surprise me. We are especially blessed tonight to have with us the best of all those friends, the love of his life, his wife, Valerie. And we know the saint that she is to have shared Don with us and with Frisbee for so many wonderful years. Thanks very much for being with us, Valerie. Please tell us a bit about your guy.
Thanks, Dan. First of all, let me thank John for putting this together. I think this is wonderful, and I know that Don would have loved this. I'm happy to be able to be a part of it. I met Don back in 1990. I was living in Delaware and he was living in New Jersey. When he drove down for our first date, he came to my door with a Frisbee. At that time, I didn't know anything about Ultimate, but as I got to know him, I did learn that Frisbee was a big part of his life. I went with him to nationals in Madison, Wisconsin, and then to England for Worlds. When we got married, he was playing on both the New Jersey Mercer County League as well as the Philadelphia Paddle League. He also was playing disc golf on most weekends. Frisbee was his passion. The year before he passed, he was actually having his mother, who was around 90 at the time, throw Frisbees in our backyard. He was measuring how far they went for her, trying to get her own record. It was nice to see the two of them doing that together. Don loved everything about Frisbee, as you know. Ultimate freestyle, disc golf, and just throwing with friends whenever he could. Although I realized how important this was to him, I never expected such an outpouring of love and support from all of his friends he had made over the years, and how many lives he had touched in this sport that he loved. He passed away shortly before the 50 years of Ultimate celebration in California that he had planned on attending. Former team members made t-shirts with his name or picture, buttons, and a life-size poster to march in the parade. I am also told that there was 16.72 seconds of silence, his MTA record. Afterwards, more celebrations of his life. Hats were made with sauce on them and mini discs stating his record. Tributes from all his friends. He was not forgotten. It was also then that I realized that he had collected hundreds of Frisbees, starting back in the 70s, as well as all the memorabilia, Rutgers posters, yearbooks, disc magazines, and t-shirts. What I found was overwhelming. Those of you who knew Don knew that he had a presence and a love of life. He loved letting everyone know that he was at the fields, and he would also be the one to light up the party. He enjoyed life every day. My daughters and I will miss him every day, but we are so lucky to have had him in our lives. Now, when opportunities come up, I know that those of us who were close to him say, "What would Don do?" And we try to live a little bit more like him and make the most of each day. In Don's last interview, he said he wanted to be remembered as a Frisbee player. He actually played Ultimate just a few days before he passed, and I know that he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I believe that his wish is fulfilled, as he will always be remembered, not just for the MTA record, but for his spirit, love of the sport, and as a Frisbee player.
Thanks. Thanks so much for that, Valerie. I love that story about Don and his mother. I'll always treasure my visit to your house in May of 2018 when Don introduced me to her, and how fired up he was to get her out there throwing with him. I mean, that was really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we have a couple of guys who go way back with Don. So far back that he wasn't even Sauce. Kevin Igor Harper and Mike Mitrione. Igor, tell us about that.
Thanks very much, Stork. As you said, I knew Don before he was Sauce. He knew me before I was Igor. Don and Bill Johnson were playing Frisbee before I was. They drafted me on the team, and we went on to play at East Brunswick in 1973. We were the first team to beat Columbia High School, had invented the game. From there, the adventure began with Don. He went on to the machine at Rutgers, where he was national champs from 1974, 75, and 76. Also being at Rutgers, he was under the tutelage, the masters of Irv Kalb and Stork. Besides Ultimate Frisbee, they also introduced us to some of the events. And ultimately, it was the event of Octad 75, where we started doing our individual stuff. After Octad 75, Don and I traveled up to Rochester, New York, thinking it would be a tournament up there, and then we come right back, but we stayed and we went on to Toronto, where we were freestyle partners. We did so well in Toronto that we were flown out to the Rose Bowl in California. Can you imagine 19 years old, being flown out, stop in Chicago, pick up the best of the Midwest, keep going out to Los Angeles and play in the Rose Bowl? Unbelievable. What a dream come true. We were lucky to do that in 75 and 76. Another big event for Sauce, which we were lucky to have, was that he tried out for a Pepsi commercial in New York City in 1978. Lo and behold, not only does he make the cut to make and film the commercial, but he films a prominent role in it. The slow motion behind the head catch, which wasn't quite a catch, but still, he loved that moment so much to the point where he figured out what the hell residual checks were. After that, he went out to Sauce went out to California for a bit, came on back to New Jersey, where he played with the Knee and the Gang at the national level, 1981 through 1985. And along the way, he had that MTA record. I'm going to throw it now to Mike Mitrione, who's a great friend of his from South Jersey.
Hey, Gore, thanks a lot. It helps if I turn off the mute, right? In any event, I met Sauce in 1978 at Octad. I was just taken back by all the celebrities and people that I had looked at in Frisbee world. I was like, oh my God, I'm here. So lo and behold, there's this young kid, Martell Fine, a child prodigy at the time, and he's throwing this mini disc with who would later I would find out would be Don Sauce Cain. And I'm like, wow, I was just mesmerized. And he comes up to me, hey, how you doing? Okay. My name's Don Cain. They call me Sauce. Uh, my name's Mike. They call me Mike. So in any event, he starts showing me all these little things and what Heiser and Mung, and like my head was spinning. From then on, we'd meet up at different tournaments, different meets, and became friends over the years. We had the same sense of humor. But what I always remember the most, that he took the time out, where back then a lot of people wouldn't share Frisbee secrets. Whatever you wanted to know, he would let you know. He'd ask you questions, and he always gave his input as to what he found, what he had learned at the latest tournament, whether it be out west or someplace else. So I'll never forget that. He took me under his wing, and 40 years ago, I joined the Sauce bus, and I've never gotten off. I could go on forever, but anyways, been a very, very good friend and family member. He's known as Uncle Sauce to my family. So anyway, thanks.
Hey guys, that was sweet, and I know you've got 1,000 more stories like that, and a couple hundred that could actually be retold. Don's Frisbee life was huge, as you hear, an old schooler for sure. He did it all and at the highest levels. And we could talk all night about just Don's ultimate, from high school to Rutgers to Pata. But tonight we're focusing on just that one epic throw, an MTA. And earlier I called it an art, and it truly is. I often think of it like fly fishing. For one, you're using this really light, delicate piece of equipment, dealing with potentially massive bit of nature, a good cast that reaches far out in the water and lightly drops your fly on the surface is almost exactly like putting a fastback up into position for a great MTA. But in both fishing and MTA, it doesn't always happen. Most casts get reeled back in, and most MTA returns are pretty routine. But with each cast and throw, there's that anticipation of huge lunker ready to take the fly. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, then the game is on. Trophy fish break off that delicate fly line, and we've all seen huge MTAs get away. It ain't over till it's caught. So to give us some insight on MTA, we have two bookends of the sport. Tom McRan, who was there at the very beginning and revolutionized the game with his introduction of the Fastback in what year? It was 1976 at the Santa Barbara NAS meet. And Rob McLeod. Rob's an elite field events player, Canadian name, where the Prime Minister plays ultimate. How good is Rob? Well, let's just say this. When the aliens come and they say, give us your best guy to throw MTA against our best guy, and we're going to incinerate the planet if you lose, we go with Rob. Tell us about catching your own throw, Rob.
Oh, thanks so much, Stork. MTA is my favorite event. It's an unbelievable event because it has so many different elements. It's not just throwing that disc in the wind and catching your own throw. There's a lot of pieces involved, and that's really what made Don so good at MTA. He had a background in freestyle and ultimate. He really learned how to throw different kinds of discs. He had skills from karate. He just loved to throw the disc. And when I interviewed him 4 years ago, he actually told me that that's what he did. He just loved to see what he could do with the disc, what the possibilities were. So MTA requires things like agility, control, wind skills, disc skills, power timing, and focus, and putting spin on that disc. And that's where Don's nickname came from, Sauce. He put some sauce in that disc. And Don was, I mean, he's the greatest MTA thrower of all time. 36 years today, he set the record. You could throw a lot of different discs for MTA. You could throw an ultimate disc. You could throw a lightweight golf disc like a Lynx or a Condor. But ultimately, the best disc so far, and probably moving forward for, if the record's ever broken, will probably be with a Fastback. It requires a lot of finesse and a lot of power. It's a very light disc. You can still buy them. They're not a specialty disc that is tough to get, so they're out there. But the one that Don threw was very special, which Tom McCran will get into. Tom is an expert in the Fastback, and he'll tell us a bit more about why the Fastback was so good for the MTA. But first, just a couple things. When you're throwing that disc in the wind, you want to find out where the wind is. You want to throw it not directly into the wind, but a little bit off center. So if you think of the wind like a clock, the wind's coming at 12 o'clock. For MTA, you typically want to throw at about 11 o'clock. Have it up in the air. And if you get to listen to Don's interview, which we'll be playing a bit later on, he explains how he approached that throw, and he just knew when it was up, it was going to be something very special. My favorite part of MTA, aside from you challenging the wind, is you're not really competing against other people. Everyone is competing against the wind. And whether you throw a big throw or someone else throws a big throw, everyone is supporting each other. So we'll talk about it a bit later, but Don's throw, he didn't really know where it was going to go. Everybody else is telling him where to go. And if you've ever thrown MTA, you've ever had a really high throw and a good throw, you know that feeling where you're looking straight up. You have no idea where the disc is going, but luckily everyone on the sideline is telling you exactly where to go. You listen to them, you follow them, and hopefully you'll get that disc. And as Don said, hopefully you can cash your chips in. Whether you catch it high, catch it low, just get that catch. So on to Tom now, who's going to talk more about the Fastback and the power of the Fastback with the MTA.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Stork and John. I want to show you first you can see it all right. This is the original Fastback, and this is where it all started from. Was about 1970, they were trying to make like a hot rod Frisbee, like a Shelby or a Super Sport or something, and it was the end of the 60s, so there's hot cars. So that's what they were trying to do with this, and they did give us the double shoulder with this, but they made a few mistakes. They put way too many ridges on it, and they put this horrendous centering ring in the center of it, which puts all the weight in the center of the Frisbee or the disc, and I think that's what wrecked it the most. Plus, it cracked right where they put this hot stamp line. So it evolved into what you see behind Rob is all those beautiful Fastbacks. He's got the Ole there, that Fastback 3 blue one, which is gorgeous. You could break a record with that. You really could. And the sister of it or the brother of it would be this orange Ole, which is a little bit different than that blue one. But the Fastback 3 proved to be the best as far as low profile, overstable, held that hard snap very, very well, the Fastback 3. However, Don used a Fastback 6. And I want to point out, you don't need one of these special Fastback 3s to set a record. Don did it with a 6, and like Rob just mentioned, there's thousands of FP6s available out there right now. You can locate, you can go out there and start throwing MTA, which is part of what we're trying to encourage you to do. So anyway, so it's very simply, MTA is either Heiser or Anheuser. How much Heiser can you put on it? How much Anheuser? That's what it boils down to. And then it's very complex after that. Basically, just back to the disc a little bit, it has the curved shoulder in relationship to the crown. So they kind of conform. It's a wing. It's a great wing device. It's low profile, slices through the air. It has a thin flight plate. All the weight is on the rim, so you can put a lot of rotation on it. Don Cain made that Frisbee spin for 16, almost 17 seconds because he was strong enough and knowledgeable enough and practiced enough to snap it hard enough to put that much spin. It's for 16 seconds. It was spinning. So anyway, it also has minimal amount of ridges, which is great. It does taper towards the ground. and it feathers. Because of the light weight, it will feather down towards the ground, which is what you need. The last thing you don't want is something that drops at the end. It's a sensitive instrument. It's a challenging, there's a fine line, like Stork was mentioning, a fine line between disaster and potential world record. And just practice and learn. There's a lot to it. I'll be glad to do any coaching. Rob is my click to set the world record. I'm really rooting for him. And just thank you for letting me talk about the Fastback. Any questions, let me know.
Hey, thanks, Tom. That's some great insight, especially in the early Fastback. I don't think most people have even seen that. And MTA was part of the original Octad. It had been in some earlier competitions at IFT, and it was popular with the BFG, mostly as a group event. But in 1974 at Rutgers, I think I got the disc somewhere. Gary Suber and Flash, here it is, just hanging here on the wall. Gary Suber and Flash and I, we're wanting to have the Octad have 8 events. And so if you're going to have 8 events, well, the 30 players that were there, we had 30 players. I don't even think that those people could tell you what those 8 events were. 30 people, right? Remember, when we came back in 1982 for WFC, we had 35 on staff. Well, here they are. Just to be sure, let's check the flying disc world here. Okay, here it is. Distance, you knew that one. MTA, you knew that one. First time ever for TRC. Golf to ribbon trees. Eastern trick catch, forerunner of freestyle, its debut and demise. Court, the forerunner of DDC. Accuracy, we're to 7. Anybody know the 8th? No, you don't. Trick throw accuracy. You didn't guess that, did you? The later Octads got huge, and when I left to direct IFA in California, I handed it off to Jim Powers in the Philadelphia Frisbee Club. Tell us where it went from there, Jim.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, the Octads were special events. We had several hundred competitors and many of the Octads, and we had multiple of events. The number of events did evolve over the years. We had double disc court, freestyle, guts. The game of guts actually came in a few times. Disc golf was always one of the anchors. Distance was an anchor. Maximum Time Aloft, which we're here talking about today. And I want to kind of set the stage for you for Octad 1984. So the Philadelphia Frisbee Club been hosting the Octad for a number of years at this point. And actually, I've known Don Sauce Cain going all the way back to 1974 when I was a captain of the Penn State Ultimate Squad and got to meet him stepping off a bus with the Rutgers Ultimate team at Penn State on an AstroTurf field. Never forget that day. And Irv Cow, Dan Roddick on the call here, promptly came out and whooped up on us pretty bad, but I got to meet Don at that time. And so we've had a long friendship over the years. But the Octad were special. It was a chance for ultimate players to do individual sports or team sports like freestyle. And so bring us up to 1984. At this point, the Philadelphia Frisbee Club was called the Philadelphia Area Frisbee Club, and we were hosting, again, an Octad, and it had multiple events in it. And it was a hot, steamy day. It was one of these days in Pennsylvania where you get these really, the sun beats down and you get these thermals that pop up around the edge of the fields. And indeed, our main throwing field was right along a wooded line, kind of on the side of a ridge. And we had some pretty interesting winds that were coming through on this particular day. And so just to set the stage, Don was out practicing with a number of the competitors warming up, along with myself. I was one of the competitors also. And I asked Don, after he had his throw, how did you feel warming up prior to the actual preliminary events? And I'm just quoting what he said here. He said, the winds were light and variable. I tried both my FB3 and my FB6 fastbacks. The FB6 seemed to be the better disc for the variable wind, occasionally gusting up to 15 miles per hour. I had one long TRC throw, run and catch throw type warm-up throw that ended up running into the trees at the perimeter of the field. So this was done feeling out the wind and getting ready for the actual competition. And then the preliminaries themselves were just a series of unbelievable throws capped off by Don's world record throw. And I want to pass it off to Dave Stemble, who will give us a little insight on the actual throw itself.
Thank you very much, Jim. Jim was the tournament director and had divided up the staff had divided up the group into two pools, an A pool and a B pool. The A pool was a little bit closer to Tournament Central, the pavilion, and the B pool was a little further out, closer to the wood line, the wooded, the line of trees that Jim referred to. And going out to the B pool, Jim had handed me 4 stopwatches and a clipboard and said, get on out there and get the competitors, get them going. And the field was covered with people practicing and warming up. But at the designated time, we cleared the field and we started sending the competitors out one at a time. And it's pretty straightforward. Timers ready. The timers all nod. They've cleared their stopwatches. They've got their thumb or forefinger positioned. They've got a clear sight out to the field. And then the competitor who's up has gone out and picked his or her position in the field where they're ready to go. And I said, timer's ready, got the nod. And I said, all right, Sauce, you're good. And he gave, the typical little raised disc hand and turned his back to us and looked out, directly out toward the wind, away from us. And that is when Sauce let it rip. With the catch, the timers all looked at each other and stared in disbelief. And all of us were looking, one stopwatch, 16.70, one stopwatch, 16.72, one stopwatch, 16.80. We did not have to go to the backup stopwatches. At this point, all pandemonium broke loose with the crazy realization of what Sauce had just caught. And for the color, I just have to toss it to TJ, his friend and warm-up partner, for his views on this amazing throw.
Well, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it very much. And thanks for having me, guys, and Valerie. I met Don first in 1980 or so, and we met basically at tournament events. We did not have an ongoing outside friendship, but we became fast friends, and he made friends easily, as did I. And we had both been playing the golf tournament in the morning, and we both had fared very well, and we're really kind of satisfied with our standing in that event. And so we sat, as we normally did, in the shade and had a little bite to eat, whatever, and had a couple of beers. As a matter of fact, we were drinking Miller Pony bottles and a little bit of Rumpelmans, because that was his favorite, along with Goldwasser. And after about a half hour or so, that was about as long as he or I could both sit for and be lazy for any length of time. That was about it. So we went out and we started tossing back and forth to each other. And of course, we both decided to go out and throw some practice MTA throws. And I was using an FB6 as well. That was the only one that I used, the only one that I had, because I did not have many fastbacks. MTA was not my strong suit. I was more apt to golf. But at any rate, as I watched Don throwing, kept telling me that he thought that, geez, he said, this wind is so light. He said, but it's kind of steady. He says, but it's the heat. He said, is making these fastbacks fly. So as we were getting ready to go, he got called up, and as did I. I don't even remember if I was in the same flight with him at the time. I can't remember, but I remember him going up, and I said, "Get him, Sauce. Go get him." And he did. So that's really my side of the story at the beginning of that monstrous throw, and it was a thrill to be there, and more of a thrill to have Don as my friend. Thanks.
You know, guys, there's a couple of questions that have been around for a long time, and one of them has already been put to rest. And that is, the mythology was that all three watches were exactly on the championship time. And that we have cleared. That's true. Talk to us a little bit about the catch. Was this milked to the ground? Is that all that was in it? Or did he jump up to catch it and put it in the bank? Or what was the catch?
Well, from TJ's standpoint, I didn't think he milked it at all, and I was kind of shocked because I've known him to catch him 10 inches off the ground, and but he did not milk this one. I figure it was probably chest high, a little bit. I don't remember if he was on one knee or not, but it was about chest high, shoulder high if he was on his knee. But he did not milk the disc.
So there was 17 in it.
Oh yes, easily 17.
Let's hope there wasn't anybody who said, "Oh man, you should have milked it." I mean, come on.
I wanted to say it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you've got that one in the bank, and it was his first throw, is that correct? It's his first throw.
Yeah.
Wow. That's putting one on the board.
Well, he had loosened up a little bit. A couple beers, a little bit of rumplements. He was in good shape.
First, I was first introduced coincidentally to this game, Octad 1980, and I thought that it was so cool to find so many disc disciplines that I had never heard of, from disc golf to freestyle, MTA, TRC, etc. They even had K9 that year, and so many players from all over the country. Famous people that I come to learn, the people were pointing out, this player, and it's still one of the biggest events that I've ever attended. Okay, but skipping ahead, Octad 84, I happened to be there as well on this infamous day with Don. And I'm not sure, again, what rotation I was in, but I do remember where I was in position to where he was throwing. But to set this up a bit more, that particular day, as Dave Stemble can show you in his diagram, there was definitely a current and some thermals going on that everyone was aware of or had discovered from some initial throws. So a lot of even good practice throws were really good. So people knew the area and the target that you wanted to hit. But again, just knowing it and hitting it is a whole nother matter. Fortunately for me, another thing, I still happen to have all of my fastbacks from that day, and after the throws were successful throws were going around, people started to ask, what are you throwing? What model? And apparently it became either the F3 or the FB6. And certainly after I heard that Don, after witnessing Don, I knew that I had 3 FB6s that I plan to use. Now, one thing with these things is to say, I have always thought that the bridges on them were good because they added an additional vortex, because power doesn't mean anything with these specialized finesse discs. If you power them too much, they'll just turn over on you and you get nothing. So it's a matter of power and finesse. And the finesse comes is that all ultimate freestylers know it's all wrist. And it's that wrist spin at the very end where you put that snap, that sauce, that extra spin. And then couple that with the rings, it's where you get that vortex. And if you can hit that apex, the wind apex at just the right time, that's where you get it. And the other thing is, several people had already had 9, 10, 11, 12-second throws. So the crowd there knew what a good throw looked like and had a relative time reference on what a throw was. So when Don took his throw, and that thing was hitting that apex a little bit higher than everyone else's, and you knew that, and then it was just flattening up and hitting that wind, that trail wind, everyone knew, okay, we're in for something special here. And you could hear the crowd just starting to cheer Don on. Yeah, catch it, because a lot of other good throws had been dropped. And that was the whole thing. Can he grab it? Now, one of the other things that was also that particular day, the field was not particularly level. So you also had to take into account that the ground itself was uneven. So as you're running around trying to track the sky, track this disc up in the sky and track that, you're also having to keep your presence of where your feet are in relationship to the slope in the ground. So which made it that much more complicated. So I remember where I was, because I was to Don's left as he first when he first released the disc. So I saw the complete flight, but as he started to maneuver to catch it, I know that he started to go downhill. And I initially thought that when he caught it, that he had milked it more because he had somewhat become out of my vision. But then I recalled after talking with some of the other people that were present that no, he had gone lower because the ground had sloped off, and he did go to one knee. And as I recall, he sort of caught it chest high like that. And that's why, it looked like to me that he was going lower. And as TJ said, he had more time, and possibly, but again, your first catch, your first throw, all you're trying to do is establish your initial catch, and then you go for something better. But who knew that his very first catch, and the one he wanted to make secure just for the record, would be the record that here we are 36 years. And I'm telling you, as that thing was coming down, it was just a matter, catch it, Don. I mean, the entire crowd there was rooting for it. Catch it, Don, catch it. And when he grabbed it, everybody just lost it. It was insane with the excitement and enthusiasm. And again, the other special part is no one in that moment knew, as great as that catch was, 36 years to the it is still the greatest catch ever. So I tip my hat, and I'm glad I so had the pleasure of being there and the pleasure of meeting Don. And and all of you guys, anyone that knows Don knows that he's always was an upbeat guy, had this infectious smile, and somebody, like you say, even if you just met him one or two times, this was always a person that you just immediately liked. And again, I feel privileged to have been there, and thank you for the time to share my story with you tonight.
I have a question for the panel that maybe they can give a quick answer to, and that is looking forward into the future. And we're hoping that that this will be a kind of an impetus to people playing more of these events, because they are really, really wonderful events, and particularly in a time when you may not want to be real close with other people. I mean, competitive twister is basically dead. And you want to be out there separate from other people. This is the ideal event. And I'm saying, what's your bet when it does eventually get broken? And it will. Do you think it'll be a fastback, or do you think it will be one of the more modern discs? Because it is kind of a thing that weighs. I think there's some evidence that the risk reward is that it's more likely, because that second tower that it's got, that's where the record was. I mean, the first tower was fantastic, but maybe that's a 14, 15. But that second tower is where the record time was. And I think probably Rob would agree that in most cases, a light condor would not react to that second tower in the same way that a fastback would. Would you agree with that, Rob?
For sure. Definitely with a condor, you can have it go further in the air, but it's not about distance that it's actually traveling away. It's more about how high you can get it to go up in the air. So absolutely agree with you. I think a fastback will be the one to break the record.
But if you wanted to win the world championship and advance through 3 rounds of super tough people like you have to all the time, you got to weigh it, right? I mean, because all you need is like a paltry 14 or something to advance, right? You don't need an 18, although that would look pretty cool on the website. So that's the balance, huh?
There are
Get your 14 in the bank and then get your 18.
I was going to say there are some heavier fastbacks that could be used, so you don't have to use a 97 gram 3 or 103 gram 6. You can go to 110 gram. It goes up to. This is an 18 mold here. This is from 1977. This is an FB 18. You have a lot of choices, and let's try some heavy ones and see if we can have the same type of performance.
Okay, well, that's something for people to think about when they go out there. I guess you need to have the full quiver of discs. And again, we're back to fly fishing. If you've ever done that, you gotta match the hatch. You need the right fly. Get the wrong fly, you're just having a nice afternoon at the lake.
Yep, and some good.
Stuart, you're so right about. Stork, you're so right about the second tower being the key to the record. After the first tower, the disc started planing out, and it was heading for the trees, the line of trees where the timekeepers and all the competitors were gathered. And in fact, it so looked like it was going to take Don right into the trees that it scattered a bunch of us sitting on those heavy park spec benches, the picnic tables, and a bunch of competitors started to try to drag the bench out of Don's way to give him room. And then that second tower happened, and it pulled and helixed the disc. I think helixed probably a total of 3 times, but it actually pulled him back into the center of the field, that light, unpredictable disc.
And really, as we've been saying, that's what makes it magic. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't magical distance throws. There are. I mean, we've all seen them when they're up there and in that position. But there's magic in that disc. You know what might close us out nicely? Val, do you by any chance have that disc? You said you had a lot of stuff.
I do. I have it right here. I don't know if you can see it.
Wow.
It's all
hermetically sealed.
I have 2 of them. This is a duplicate, but the original, you can see Don wanted to take very good care of it and has it all wrapped up in plastic.
Wow.
Wow, that's neat.
That is so sweet. And the duplicate is interesting because I remember talking to him about that. And the way a lot of famous people have a double who represents them in public, I think he carried the duplicate when he would do autograph sessions at events because, people wanted a picture, of the guy in the disc, and he didn't want to risk the real one. So he always had that at home in plastic with you to be safe.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, here it is.
Keep that one safe. The thing about that, and we've been talking a lot about the fastback and these classic fastbacks, the 3 and the 6. I mean, everybody was going back and forth between them. A really interesting development is when the light condor and lynx came out, and I cannot tell you how many players came to me, countless, and said, "Hey man, Stork, when those big Swedes start pumping these out, I mean, Donnie's record is going to be history. We'll be over 20 seconds in no time." Well, not yet. Oh, it'll happen. But we're already well past legendary. Just think about how many great throwers have had great throws over all those years. Some have been excruciatingly close, but Don's still there. And you know, it seemed like Bob Beeman's epic long jump record stood for an amazingly long time, but it was only 23 years till Mike Powell came along. Saucer's mark is approaching 40 years. But the big issue that came up with Don late in the going is, I get a call from the Svenska Frisbee Förbundet. Fortunately, their educational system's a lot better than mine, so the conversation was in English. And they're saying, hey, we've got one of our players who's about to go up in the space shuttle. And Christer Fuglesang, overall player, ultimate player. And when he's up there, he's going to be doing an international telecast, and he wants to break the MTA record. What do you think? And I'm going, give me, let me get back to you on that. And so I hang up and, of course, immediately call Sauce. I go, Donnie, got an interesting issue over here, about to have a weightless attempt on your record. And he's, I mean, you got to give the guy credit. I mean, he took it in his typical unflappable way. He went, well, no gravity, huh? Well, records are made to be broken. I said, come on, buddy, come on, not broken like that. I mean, let's think about this a little bit, because I mean, as this thing gets bigger, we're going to have records on like the moon. There's going to be a lunar record, you know, and then there's going to be like, is there Venusian? Is that a word? I mean, can they even do it there? I mean, if it's on Jupiter, I mean, it's gonna, your fastback's gonna weigh 250 grams on Jupiter, and the weather sucks. But we're gonna need separate records. How about this? Let's give him the intergalactic record. The intergalactic record. You see? And he says, "Hey, cool. Let's do that. Then I'll still have the Earth record, right?" I said, "Yes, you'll have the Earth record. They'll have the intergalactic record." So I call the Swedes back. They're good with it. And then I'm saying, but I want a favor from you. I want a little favor from you. I want you, I hear he's doing an EVA the next day. When he goes out, I want him to throw distance. Have him throw distance. They say, oh man, I don't think we can do that. You know, space trash and everything. I say, space trash? There's all that crap floating around out there. We can't throw one ABR into space. And they say, well, what would you mark it anyway? What would the distance be? And I said, that's the kicker. We mark it to be determined. Okay, to be determined. It's just going forever. Damn Swedes wouldn't do it. I'll never let them forget that. I'm very, very disappointed. You know, this has been, as Don and I used to say sometimes, a little slice of heaven. I mean, it really has. I mean, particularly to have all these folks together. And first of all, I'd like to say thanks to John and Gravity Bed Media, because without his initiative on this and their execution, this absolutely would not have happened. You hear people say that sometimes, but in this case, it's completely true that it never ever would happen. And just in closing, when I think back of all the different experiences I had with Don from early days through working at IFA, which was just an absolute dream. I mean, imagine a staff with Ski and Joe and Amy and Don, and I mean, it was McGinnis and Bonapane. I mean, it wasn't going to work, I can tell you that. But one of the best things is when first meeting Don. And I can remember an early Rutgers barnstorming trip where, you know, we go around to different colleges. We get off the bus and we're warming up for the game somewhere, Tufts maybe, the Jumbos. And I'm going, well, I go to her, where's Don? Where's Don? We look over and he's over there with the other team. I'm going, Don, get over here. You know, he comes trotting over. I say, Don, what were you doing? He says, oh, I was setting up the party. I mean, that's Don. I mean, a guy who thankfully never grew up and an inspiration to all of us. He died young, but I think we know that would have been true for him at any age. And with that thought, may we all die still as young and playful as Don, the kid that we'll all love forever. Hey, once again, we really want to thank everybody for joining us. And I mean, it feels just like a great get together at Virginia State's or something like that, because we know this is a tribe gathering, and we really appreciate you coming out to mark this day, which is such a big one in our history, and to have this wonderful remembrance of one of our greatest guys. So thanks so much for taking time out of your day. Not that you're busy, but thanks for joining us. And it's been, as I said, a little slice of heaven.
Then that brings us to perhaps my most notable thing, which was one of the Octads, which is a multi-event individual performance kind of a tournament that in 1984, I happened to go out on the field to throw my very first MTA, and I'd had some great practice throws. I realized that there really was a wonderful thing that you could catch, and I envisioned a shelf that was about a third-story throw. It couldn't be anything lower. I threw this thing, and it went straight up and sat on that shelf and started to slowly carve across the sky. Well, I was an ultimate player. I'm not afraid to run. And I got on my horse and I started going that way as fast as I could. Other people that watched it from a better perspective said that it towered. Again, I'm running like a madman over to where it is. It starts to go into some trees, shies away, starts going back the other way. Now I'm running back the other way. I just want this thing to be over. And I'm underneath, I'm in the worst spot possible. It's right above me. And if it runs out of gas, it's gonna pick a direction and go. So I'm under thinking, make your move, make your move. And it had enough sauce on it that it kept spinning the whole flight right down in front of me. And I had some kind of a flashback from a karate class, and I squared off and went bang, and caught it straight out from my chest. I get a lot of grief for that. Should have milked it, sauce. Hey, you know what? I cashed in my chips. I didn't want to be in that other book of world-class idiots that dropped the tremendous thing. So that was my first throw. My best buddy is throwing next, and he's looking at me like, what am I supposed to do? In the meantime, I don't even know what's happened. People come running over and tackle me. And I'm like, did I footfall? What's happening here? And they're yelling what happened, and it's hard to believe. And then, then people kind of calm back down. They realize they have to proceed with the tournament. And of course, the hardcore competitors are like, oh, well, now you're going to save your arm, right? You're going to scratch the next 4 throws. And I look at them, Rob, and say, you guys don't understand me at all. I am here to throw. And now I don't have to hold back. I thought that was pretty good. Oh, I've got to tell you, I have my own noise. All right. Early in my ultimate career, I yelled. I would yell supportive things. I would yell for joy. And it's turned into this noise. I'll do it. Well, it's loud. And it's just kind of, I love it. I want on my tombstone that I was a Frisbee player. That's all I ever wanted to be. I just love it.